What you're seeing now is color graded footage. But when I go out and capture moments, it actually looks like this. Flat, gray, almost lifeless. And honestly, there's moments where life feels that way too. As though I'm only moving through it, not really seeing the beauty of every day. Then I started to learn how to color grade. I'm no professional, but I found tools to help bring my footage to life. And in doing so, it changed the way I see the world. I notice colors differently now, like how light can make a moment feel warm, how shadows add depth. I'm able to feel moments a lot more than I used to. Vlogging didn't just teach me how to film, it taught me how to see. This is how I turn moments into memories.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm JB. I like to document my life. I started a vlog in my 30s and I like to share the things that I learned along the way. Today, I'm going to be talking about the color grading process, how I get my videos to look how they do. And this is a process that is very fun to me. It's something that I'm starting to take a lot more seriously than I used to. When I first started, I was using the Phantom LUT pack. That one is pretty well known, I would say. They have a good set of LUTs that you can choose from, and it was very good when I was first starting out and I didn't know how to color grade, and it helped me to see what my footage could look like once I start learning the process even more. From there, I ended up finding a LUT pack from John Rosallo. It's the Classic Print 35mm LUT pack. He also has a power grade for those who use DaVinci. I personally do all my editing in Final Cut, but that LUT pack is still something I use to this day. I really like the colors that comes out of it, and when I need videos that are just quick or I just need to get something out with colored footage, I'll opt to use that LUT. But now I am using a tool called Dehancer. Dehancer actually reached out to me to review their product, so I've been spending the past month playing around with Dehancer, learning it, and seeing how it could fit into my workflow. They're not paying me to say any of this. They don't have any say in the things that I say about the product. So everything that you're about to hear and see is my own personal opinion. And yeah, pretty cool that I get to do something like this. I think when it comes to coloring, one of the things that I like to keep in mind when I'm editing and looking back at all this footage is how can I turn moments into memories? And I think using Dehancer, it's really opened my eyes to see what is possible with color grading. And I know I don't have extensive knowledge in how to do all of these things, and I know that there's more sophisticated, robust tools and options in things like DaVinci. But for what I do, I think Dehancer has helped a lot in how I color my footage. So today we're gonna be showing you guys how I do this. So everything that you're seeing today has been color graded using Dehancer, and I'm gonna be walking you through how I colored that intro section that you guys watched, and I'll be sharing my thoughts about this tool. Let's get to it, guys. Alrighty guys, so what we're looking at right now is my timeline for the intro section of this vlog. The cool thing about Dehancer is that it is all contained within this section over here. Everything is easy for you to look at and to navigate through. I think this is personal thoughts. I think this is very nice in comparison to what I see in DaVinci. I believe in DaVinci, all of these different things are handled in different nodes, like you have your little node tree going on. But for me, I think just seeing it all here and being able to just scroll through it makes it easier for me to visualize. Again, this is personal opinion. Some people might hate this, some people might love this. Depends on your workflow, but yeah. When it comes to Dehancer as well, it can feel very overwhelming because there's so many different sections. You have your input, film, developer, compression, expand, print, so on and so forth. But one of the cool things about Dehancer is that they have this whole resource learning center thing on their website where you can learn about all of these different things that the tool offers. So for example, if you wanted to learn about film compression, I can easily just come in here and then I can read about it. I can see some samples, what it looks like with and without it on. And then from there, you can go back into Final Cut or your editing software of choice and play around with all these different things and learn. Like me. So if we take a look at this footage right here, this is already colored. You can see my grade layer here or my Dehancer layer. If I turn this off, the footage is very flat, very gray. So the final edit looks like this. So one thing that we'll do right now is recolor that same clip together. So in my browser, I'll take that same clip and I'll apply it to the end of my timeline. There's two ways that you can apply Dehancer. The first way, which I personally don't do, but you can if you want, you click your clip and then you go into your effects browser, film emulation, Dehancer, and then you'll see this whole thing pop up. That's the first way to do it. The second way to do it, if I just undo this real quick, is I'll go into my titles. I created this custom thing. These are all just how I like to apply different layers. I'll take this grade layer, place it on top of my footage, and then I'll double click Dehancer to apply it, and we get that same thing, except this time, Dehancer is only applied on this layer, which means I can still do other things underneath it. So if I turn this off, I have my footage, my clip for what it is. So the first thing I'll do here is I will actually turn this off, this expand, and I'll turn off the print, I'll turn off the film grain. From here, we can select our camera source. If you filmed in Rec 709, great, you can already get going. But from here, I filmed this clip in S-Log3, so I'll choose my camera. I'll choose Sony. This is the ZV-E1. This can be a topic for another time, but I label all of my clips by camera name. So from here, we'll choose S-Gamut 3 Cine. From here, we have this, and this is already kind of colored using the film profile Kodak Vision 3 250D. This is just a default, so if I turn that off, this is what my footage looks like if it applies just a base LUT or color correction on top of it. So we'll enable this, and then from here, there's so many different options that you can choose from. Another cool thing that Dehancer does is if we go back to their website, we go to resources, films and profiles, they actually have some samples of their different profiles. Not all of them have samples available, but let's say, for example, I wanted to look at this film profile. We can see different things about it, different information, and they even show some samples of what this film print looks like. Some examples too that some people have done in Dehancer or using Dehancer, which is pretty cool because you can get a feel already for what you like and what you want to try. So let's try it out. Let's choose that one. I personally like to use Fuji, where is it? Fuji Natura 1600. And then from here, I'll go ahead and fix different things. So in this case, let's choose that Kodak print, Ektar 100. So we can go ahead and adjust different things like your push and pull. One thing that I like to do at first is I like to think of things like LUTs, where you kind of have your base grade, and from there you can tweak the individual clips later. So I like to build it out first. So for example, here I like to bring my footage up just a little bit, and I like to introduce some warmness to my clips. I'll usually keep the tint as is, and then we'll move on. So we go over to Film Developer. This, from my understanding, I could be wrong again, I am still learning this tool as well. This Film Developer tool pushes the film profile even more to what it is. So for me, I like to have more contrast in my clip. So I'll bump up my contrast just a bit. I usually keep my gamma correction as is, but this helps with exposure, brightness, all that stuff. I could be wrong again. I just see what it does to my image and I choose what I like. I'm still learning, by the way, so please excuse me. What I like to do though is I do like to use the color boost. This tool helps with saturation. You can desaturate your image, you can add more, but I like to keep it at around the 30 mark. So we'll keep that there. We'll jump into film compression. This one, if I'm not mistaken, this impacts your highlights. So if you look in, say, like these bright areas here, if I enable or disable it, you'll see that the highlights are back to being really bright. When I enable it, you see that the highlights kind of become a bit more manageable. So what I'll do is I will boost the impact, just because sometimes I don't want my highlights to be super blown out. Color density, again, this helps with saturation. I like to bump this up just a little bit, and then I'll keep the white point and the tonal range where it's at. From here on the expand, this, I like to think of this as my contrast. So if I enable this, the black point, again, helps make my shadows darker, and then the white point, this can make my highlights super blown or super non-existent. I usually like to adjust only my black point. Sometimes I'll maybe update the white point just a little bit, and then we'll get this image over here. Next up, we'll go into the print profile. If I enable this, this is like that final layer of the print. For the purpose of trying something new with you guys, I'll use this Kodak one. And then from here, again, you can tweak final things of your image, your target white point. So notice how we see things getting warm or cool. So we'll just keep that as is. You can adjust that final exposure, color density. This is more so on the saturation stuff again, and you are good to go. So this is what that final image looks like. From here, you can add a lot of other cool things to your footage. You can add film grain, you can add halation, you can add your bloom, you can add all these other things. Usually when I add grain, I'll zoom in just a bit. I like to use the 65. I think that is the sweet spot of grain for me. So if I went to 35, that's what it would look like. The lower we go in millimeter, the more grain that we see in our image. Moving on, we have halation. So this is that red glow we see on like the outlines and stuff. If I go into mask mode and enable it, we'll see the different areas that's impacted. So we'll see halation in this area over here. If I were to turn that off, boom, yep. And then bloom, I usually keep bloom off because when I film, I use mist filters anyways, so I don't want to add too much bloom. You can add film damage, which is pretty cool, and then film breath, gate weave, all these other things. I personally don't use these, but I use film grain and halation here and there. Personal preference. Another cool thing that you can do is if you want to keep using this preset that you've kind of built out, you can actually save it as a LUT. So if I go to LUT generator and I go to normal, I can export the LUT. And then this, I can just load it in and use it for any other future clips. So for example, if I take this same clip that we just touched up, if I take the original version that I colored, I actually save this as a LUT. So if I need to edit something really quick later down the line, I can just get this grade, slap it on my footage, and I'm good to go. For example, let's take this clip, duplicate it over here. We'll grab this custom LUT. From here, we can see that I have my Dehancer folder. If I just apply this LUT here, boom, we have that same grade that I had in that intro section. So pretty cool that you're able to do this type of stuff in Dehancer. All right, so what we can then do from here, remember how before I talked about how I like putting it on its own adjustment layer so that way I can just see my clip for what it is. What I like to do is if I am editing a sequence, then let's say I take another clip. Let's take this right here on the water. I'm just gonna put it right here. When I drag this over to extend it, we now see that this is being applied to my footage here. One thing that I like to do from here, after applying my grade layer, underneath is where I like to do all my other adjustments. So if I take another adjustment layer here, I usually do this clip by clip. So this layer should only be affecting this clip. So for example, if I were to go into here and I were to bump up my exposure, we'll see that the exposure of this clip has not been impacted. And the reason why I do this is, yes, my grade will apply that same type of grade to all my clips, but I still like to tweak things here and there. So for example, with this clip, maybe I might feel like this clip is too dark. So what I'll do is I'll come into here and then I'll bump up my exposure just a tad. Maybe I want my shadows to not be as dark, or maybe I want to introduce more shadows. Do something like that. Maybe drop the highlights just a little bit, brighten up the image just a tad, and maybe I want to make my highlights a bit warmer. So by doing that, I'm able to still have my grade going on, but this only affects the clip. So when you're working in layers, my brain just naturally thinks of this way because I used to do some graphic design here and there. I still have my grade layer. I can take off these adjustments if I want to, but when I add them in, it doesn't impact anything else. So that's why I like to have my grade layer and I like to have adjustment layers per clip. Helps a lot with coloring. So for example, in here, there's a different way that I fix clips up, but you can see here that I'll adjust things like exposure and contrast. Let me find a clip where I actually did it. I think this one, yeah. So you'll see with this clip, I actually adjusted the highlights, the midtones, and the shadows here. So if I were to take that out, the clip was actually very dark. Still having that grade applied, but once I did all those secondary adjustments, we are good to go. So yeah, that is how I like to use Dehancer when it comes to coloring my footage. I think it's a very versatile tool, especially coming from someone who is just applying LUTs and then calling it a day. This is definitely the next step for me in terms of learning how to color my footage. The next step, of course, is to learn how to get into all of these tone curves and all that stuff, but we will cross that bridge together when we get there. All right, guys, so when it comes to my thoughts about the tool after seeing my process and how easy it is to just tweak things, let's talk about pros and cons. Generally speaking, I edit in Final Cut Pro, so I can't speak for the experience on other softwares, but for me, it works for what I do. So I think it's good in terms of how Dehancer works and how it's laid out within Final Cut. So that's a good for me. One of the bad things at first is that it was overwhelming, but I think that's only because I came again from just applying a LUT and calling it a day. There was so much that I didn't know, and there's still things that I don't know necessarily how it properly works. I know how it affects my image, but I don't know all of the underlying things. But the good thing about all of that, I guess, is that, again, Dehancer has a website full of tools and resources that you can use to really dive in and learn the tool, which will make it easier for you to use as you continue to use it. So those are two good things that come from a bad thing. So overwhelming, but they provide so many resources for you to learn. And once you get that down, it is a very easy tool to use, especially once you know what your look is, especially when you generate a LUT out of this. You just apply that to all your future projects, and then you're pretty much good to go. You'll know exactly how your clips are gonna look like. And then from there, you can tweak your footage in a different way to tell a different story or to create a different mood. And again, I think that's one of the beauties of color grading, is that different color grading techniques and different colors in general can create these different moods and vibes and atmospheres, and it can really bring a story to life. And it can turn, for example, a clip of the forest from looking something like this to being something very dark and moody. Like, let's just try it right now. If I went back here and I wanted something moodier, maybe I'll go to here. Boom, my footage isn't even full of color anymore. It's very black and white. Maybe I want to create something that feels very old and reminiscent. I'll make my footage black and white with this grade, and then maybe I'll go heavier on the grain. And now this is just a whole different mood to my video. So again, another pro is that the tool is very versatile. There's so many options and different things that you can play around with. Another, I guess, depends on your mileage, is performance. So right now I use an M4 Max MacBook Pro. Before I was using an M1 MacBook, and using different effects and these different layers of adjustments on my old laptop, the fans would be running and my laptop would kind of slow down a bit. I think right now I haven't run into any performance issues, so that's probably from the kind of laptop that I have, right? So your mileage may vary, performance might be bad for some of you, but for me, performance has been pretty good. So all in all, I think Dehancer is a great tool once you learn how to use it. With all things, it can be overwhelming at first because there's just so much presented to you in one go that you might just be like, oh my gosh, I don't know where to even begin. But again, Dehancer has a great website to get you started. And yeah, that is how I like to use Dehancer in my workflow over this past month. I plan on using it a lot more and learning the ins and outs of it, and hopefully learning how to grade from scratch. That's the next step in my process and in learning how to edit footage. But for now, Dehancer does the job for me, and I like how my footage turns out using the tool. All right, guys, so if you like what you watch, please comment, like, subscribe, all of that cool stuff. And if you were interested in using Dehancer in your workflow, you can use promo code jajo10 at checkout to save yourself 10%. So yeah, pretty crazy that I'm saying that, but yeah, guys, if you like what you saw, please like, subscribe. Let me know down below what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.